Hello, it's me, Ariza Gaming, and welcome back to another episode of Sandbox Showcase, the series where I talk about problems in Oxygen Not Included and how to solve them easily and efficiently. And today we're going to talk about Slicksters, which are a very cute base game critter that actually converts carbon dioxide in the atmosphere into usable crude oil. Now, wouldn't that be handy in real life? So each Slickster actually eats 20 kilograms per cycle of carbon dioxide, or 33.3 grams per second, and converts it at a 50% efficiency into crude oil. So this is really interesting because carbon dioxide is normally a waste product that your base is generating somehow, or your duplicates are generating, and you're trying to get rid of it with carbon skimmers, door crushers, venting it into space, feeding it to plants, you name it. But these critters will actually turn into a useful industrial product that you can either use to make materials or burn for power. So Slicksters are really good. And they also are a pretty good meat source. Each Slickster is worth 3,200 calories of meat. They have a fairly typical lifespan of 100 cycles, and they lay an egg every 6 cycles. So it works out at about 500 calories per cycle per breeding Slickster you have. So if you have a load of industry, this basically guarantees the food source for duplicants. And there's actually a couple of variants of Slicksters as well. Depending on what temperature the Slickster is kept at, you'll get different eggs. And generally, Slicksters like it quite hot. They're comfortable between 50 and 140 degrees C, and they'll live between 0 and 200 degrees C. But if you keep them in a room where their body temperature dips below 60 degrees C, they'll start to lay long-hair Slickster eggs. And this isn't very good, because long-hair Slicksters are useless by design. It's a penalty critter. They eat oxygen and poop nothing. They eat 30 kilograms per cycle of oxygen. They do admittedly give plus 50 decor in a 7-tile radius, but the issue is you can use dense puffs for meat production as well, and they'll eat the oxygen, and you get to keep 95% of the oxygen as oxalate. And if you just want decor surrounding your duplicants, well, guess what? You can just breed a load of tropical pacus and have them flop around on the floor. There really isn't any good use for a long-hair Slickster, other than being a flex to anyone that you're showing your colony online and your base. So keep your Slicksters above 60 degrees C. Because the environment is non-breathable, it's non-conductive, and it's pretty hot, you're probably going to rush these guys in Atmo suits. So bear that in mind as well. You're also incentivized to get them even hotter, because if your eggs are above, if the critters are above 100 degrees C, they will start laying molten Slickster eggs. And molten Slicksters are very similar in that they convert carbon dioxide into a liquid, but they actually convert it into refined petroleum. So you don't even have to refine the crude oil in an oil refinery with a petroleum boiler. You just get the refined petroleum out of your carbon dioxide immediately. And this is absolutely fantastic. It skips so many steps, but you just have to keep them hot and you have to ranch them hot. So even though these guys like it hot, they will die above 300 degrees C, and they're only comfortable up to 200 degrees C. So you've got to hit that sweet spot with the temperature, but we'll show you how to do that with our ranch design in a minute. One of my favorite critters overall. The long-hair Slicksters obviously are pretty useless, but they do at least live at duplicate temperatures between 0 and 50 degrees C. And they live in quite a large temperature range outside of that as well. They're just not very comfortable in it. But again, ignore these guys. You want these guys. And you probably mostly want these guys, unless you need some crude oil for liquid locks or for some other reason than using it as fuel or material. So the next question is, how do you actually feed these guys? Because what generates carbon dioxide? And how many Slicksters can you feed per building? Well, we've got a range of buildings here, and we've actually got a couple of geysers as well that produce carbon dioxide. To start with, let's just have a look at the basic coal generator. If this is running full time at 600 watts, it's producing 20 grams per second of carbon dioxide. That's enough to feed 0.6 tame Slicksters. So that's not a lot. Coal generators are pretty clean. In comparison, the wood burner actually generates 170 grams per second of carbon dioxide, which is enough for 5.1 tame Slicksters. So if you've got a lot of wood lying around your base, because perhaps you're on a Venante map and you've got a load of wild arbor trees, you can burn that for your carbon dioxide, and that can keep quite a few Slicksters up and running, especially if you plant the arbor trees. So that's not bad. The peat burner, if you have the prehistoric planet pack, produces 40 grams per second of carbon dioxide. It's enough for 1.2 tame Slicksters. Most of the waste from this is polluted water, so bear that in mind. Similarly, the natural gas generator mostly generates polluted water as waste, but it also generates 22.5 grams per second of carbon dioxide. That's enough for 0.675 tame Slicksters if it's running constantly at 800 watts. And then the petroleum generator is probably the main source of carbon dioxide you're going to use for this. Because for 2 kilowatts of continuous power, it actually generates 500 grams per second of carbon dioxide, and that's enough carbon dioxide for 15 tame Slicksters. So if you're actually burning ethanol or petroleum, you're going to be able to run a couple of ranches of Slicksters off of that. In terms of non-power generators that produce carbon dioxide, we have the plastic polymer press. This only produces 8.3 grams per second. That's enough for 0.25 tame Slicksters. 4 polymer presses to 1 tame Slickster. That's your ratio there. The gas range actually produces carbon dioxide as well. It produces 25 grams per second, so that's 0.75 tame Slicksters worth. And then the smoker produces 20 grams per second, so that's the same as the coal generator, 0.6 Slicksters, tame Slicksters, that is for. But there's one that we've actually missed out here that I'm going to put in, and I'll show you why. It's the ethanol distiller. If you have a load of arbor trees that you're actually getting the wood from, you could use the ethanol distiller to turn that wood into ethanol, and you still get a similar amount of carbon dioxide out to the wood burner. You get 166.67 grams per second out. That's enough for 5 tame Slicksters. And then you could burn the ethanol in the petroleum generator. And that's enough for 3.75 Slicksters, 1 ethanol distiller's worth. So overall, the combination of these two buildings will let you feed 8.75 Slicksters, which is just about a full ranch full. They each take up 12 space. So that's something you can do if you really want to. And then we actually have the geysers as well. I like to use the hot carbon dioxide vents to get my Slicksters started. The carbon dioxide is a little bit too hot for them, but carbon dioxide has a very low heat capacity, so it's quite easy to cool it down. And on average, a carbon dioxide vent will produce 105 grams per second-ish over its active and dormant periods. Each vent will vary, but that's usually enough for around 3.15 tame Slicksters. And if you geotune it, that's going to be enough for 6.3 tame Slicksters, generally. In contrast, the cold carbon dioxide geyser actually produces slightly more carbon dioxide at 150 grams per second on average. And that's enough for 4.5 tame Slicksters or 9 tame Slicksters if it's geotuned again. But I don't think you're necessarily going to be wanting to geotune carbon dioxide geysers for this. But those are all the different sources of carbon dioxide. It's mostly going to be if you're running a lot of this industry that Slicksters become relevant, because the other buildings don't really produce enough carbon dioxide that you want to ranch them en masse. You could probably get away with having one Slickster ranch eating most of the waste from your relatively clean generators. So that's good. One other quirk of Slicksters I want to talk about before we get into the ranch design. The oil that comes out of them is actually going to come out of the temperature of the Slickster. And this is very interesting because the gas, carbon dioxide, has a low heat capacity and it's not very conductive. So generally, it's quite hard to cool Slicksters down. Their body temperature starts off high when they spawn and when they reset as an adult. And they'll output the liquid that will be hot, and then they'll dunk themselves in that liquid, which is much more conductive. So they're generally pretty hard to cool down. But if they do get too cold, it's very difficult to warm them back up, is what I would say. The best thing you can do for your Slicksters to keep them at the right temperature is to heat the liquids they're in. That heat will transfer over to the gas, and generally it will be enough to top them up and keep them in the right sort of temperature range. So a liquid temperizer is really good for this. It doesn't have to run super often, and it will definitely make sure that your Slicksters don't get too cold. So that's really good. But yeah, let's get on to the ranch design. I have 2 different designs I want to show you that make use of the Slickster's unique motion properties. We'll actually just let them move around for a little bit so you can see what they do. They like to move around on the surface of liquids, and they'll occasionally drop into them. So they're a little bit weird like that. And this one's just actually pooped some petroleum, as you can see. There we go, the glorious goods. liquid physics are a bit weird in this game. But yeah, let's move on to the ranch design, and you'll see what I mean. See you in a minute. So, we're back. We have our room full of hot carbon dioxide from our various industrial processes. And now we're actually going to start putting together our Slickster Ranch design. We put in a little ladder and fire pole access shaft here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make an insulated build that we're going to dump our hot carbon dioxide into in general. And then you can just have it wherever you want in your base, and it's not going to be an issue. But we're just going to build it in this environment as a basis. So we're going to put some insulated tiles in. These can be made out of igneous rock, or any material really will do. And we're going to start at the bottom of the shaft, and we're actually going to make a little pool to collect all of the excess oil from the excess Slicksters. We're going to be breeding them up top, but the good thing is, all of the excess Slicksters can actually be left down here to continue converting some carbon dioxide passively. It's very obviously they're getting fed and they're still tame. They're not getting groomed, so they won't breed, but they will still eat a fair amount of this carbon dioxide. So that's actually really good for us, so we can leverage that. So we're going to have like a little pump in here. And we're probably going to want to make this with heat-resistant material. If you're doing this with just regular Slicksters, you can set this whole ranch design up to work with non-heat-resistant materials if you keep it between 60 and 75 degrees C, and we'll talk about temperature management in a bit. But generally, I like to build this stuff out of gold amalgam if you have a marshy biome. 125 degrees C overheat temperature is good enough for even molten Slicksters. And we're going to be covering everything in oil anyway, so the low conductivity of gold amalgam generally isn't an issue. But if you don't have gold amalgam, you can make some steel. It's fine. We're going to put a hydro sensor in, and again, it doesn't matter what you make this out of. But we're just going to set this to above 50. This is just going to make sure that the pump isn't pumping up little dregs of oil. So it's going to stay power efficient. And then what we're actually going to do is we're going to make the little holding cell for all of the excess Slicksters. So we're going to put a mesh tile here so the oil can drip through. We're then actually going to put some more tiles in. These don't have to be insulated because they're going to be inside the design. And then what we're actually going to do is we're going to put some more tiles here. I'll explain these ones in a minute. But you'll want to get a bottle emptier or get a pedestal and put a little bottle of oil on it. You're just going to want to dump a little bit of oil in this gap. Just like that. And then we'll get rid of these buildings. Then you lower the tile in here by 1. And then that's going to cause the oil to touch both the top and the bottom of the tile. And then what we'll do as well is we'll put a door here. And then we're also going to put a mesh tile here because we're going to let excess oil drip down here later. But the long and short of it is, Slicksters can generally climb over 2 tile high obstacles. And the baby Slicksters can actually do this as well. If we spawn in a little Slickster larva, that has the same motion range as the adult, which is going to complicate our ranch design slightly. But all will be revealed in a minute. But anyways, we're going to be using our critter dropper to drop all of our excess Slicksters into this section, where they can't actually climb out of it. But the important thing is, they're not actually going to be kept constrained to a room. Our build is going to be insulated, but it's not going to have any doors leading to it necessarily until you get into the actual grooming bits. So we'll be able to keep a large population of glum, tame Slicksters in here, producing oil from excess carbon dioxide. So not only do we have the industrial capacity of the breeder ranches, but also all the excess Slicksters, which is a rare novelty. Normally you're not feeding the excess critters, but we can in this case. It's really good. We're going to put an auto sweeper in here. Again, you'll probably want to make these out of heat-resistant materials if we can. Copper, gold, iron are pretty good for it. And then we'll get a conveyor loader. We'll just put that in here. And then we can actually take all of the meat out of here as well and send it wherever we want in our base. So yeah, that's going to be the excess Slicksters tank. And we're going to have some doors. We love our pneumatic doors, don't we? And we're going to put some more here. And we're going to put a load in. There you go. But essentially, we're going to be dropping all of our excess Slicksters down here, and they will fall through these doors. But this will also restrict other Slicksters and prevent them from wandering in and out, as we were. So next up is the actual breeder ranch design, and this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. So actually, remove that tile, we don't need it. we're going to put in 3 tiles here and then another tile here. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to make a little row of oil. And this could start off not being a row. You could start off just delivering Slicksters to our ranches manually, and that's absolutely fine. We're going to put some mesh tiles over here. We're going to put some mesh tiles over here as well. And then we're going to put a door here. We're going to put a door here. This is going to go up here, and then we're going to put some more tiles on top. And then we're going to put a door in here. And this is actually going to be our Slickster breeding ranch. So we're going to put a grooming station in, so we can do the grooming errand, keep them happy. We're also going to put in some conveyor loaders, just so we can grab all of the products and eggs and send them their respective ways. We're then also going to put an auto sweeper over here, so we can grab all of the eggs and meat, etc. And then this little 3x3 gap is very conspicuous looking. We're going to have a critter condo here, so we can keep the Slicksters happy. Now, this is a fairly small ranch. It's only 24 tiles. But because we've got the critter condo in here, we can actually have 3 Slicksters in here instead of the usual 2. So, yeah, we're putting those buildings there. We're also just going to put in a critter sensor. There is going to be some automation involved, believe it or not. And, yeah, then the Slicksters are going to be in here. So you can just... When you're starting off, you can replace this auto sweeper with a critter drop-off. And you can just deliver the Slicksters here to start. And they can start working on converting all of this carbon dioxide into crude oil. So that will eventually get to the point where it actually fills up this gap. So for now, I'm actually just going to tile this here just to show you what it's going to look like. So let's spawn in a fairly large amount of oil at the right temperature. I'm going to spawn in at 70 degrees for now. So what you'll want to do is you'll want this to fill up with oil up to the point where it's about to overflow into here. And this will happen naturally. So what will happen is the crude oil is going to get pushed through this gap. It's going to flow through the mesh tile and it's going to start flowing in here when you've got too much of it. But because of how liquids work in this game, you're not actually going to end up with that much liquid in this pocket here. You're going to end up with a little bit, but it's going to stop flowing after a while. And most of the liquid is going to be kept in these tiles, which is actually pretty convenient for us. You can see the amount is adjusting over here, but that's just because it's flowing within the room, left to right. So once the oil gets to this level, it's going to stay relatively stable. And then what we'll do as well is we're actually going to put a mechanized airlock in here. And we're going to automate this as well. And we'll do that in a bit. But the key to all of this, the key to the design that I haven't really even talked about yet, is we're going to dump all of the Slickster eggs in here. And what will actually happen is the Slicksters will hatch immediately as Slickster larvae when they're ready. And then they'll immediately be drowning because Slicksters don't actually breathe in liquid. So they'll be drowning immediately, and it's very sad. But what they'll do is they'll immediately go searching for an exit. And they'll go searching horizontally. So if we actually open this door here, the Slickster can navigate into this room, and it will, because it's drowning, it will immediately move and go into the next room. And there'll be a door here. It'll drop down a little bit, but it will be able to climb in the room. So let's just speed it up and you'll see that happen. In fact, it usually happens when they start breathing. They'll hover for a little bit and then they'll get on the surface nice and neatly. So now he's in the ranch, and then you'd automate the doors so that the door would close when the ranch is full. And then when all of the ranches are full, you can just open this mechanized airlock, and then the Slickster can instead escape this way because it can float up over the tile. And then it will enter this room where we're going to start manually dropping, we're going to start automatically dropping all of the Slicksters down into the excess Glum Slickster holding room. And this concept here is essentially the whole build. The main thing with Slickster Ranches is just how we're actually going to arrange them. And the reason I like this build in particular is because... I'm just going to put a few infrastructure bits in. The reason I like this build in particular is because you can scale it horizontally and vertically, however you like. So, because Slicksters can actually reach up to... They can reach an exit up to 32 tiles away from their spawn tile. We're actually going to take advantage of this, and we're going to be able to put up to 4 of these ranches in here. So that's quite a way. Again, this is important because this tile here is specifically 32 tiles away from the chute. So this is the last tile that the baby Slickster can actually reach, or an adult Slickster for that matter, to get to a ranch. So this restricts us to 4 ranches in a row. But obviously this is quite a long area. And then we'll just put in all the duplicate buildings, and that won't take too much time. And then, again, these rooms will just eventually fill up with oil from your normal Slickster ranching behavior. So we'll just fill these up. And then what you'll do is you can actually have a mesh tile at the end just to prevent the Slicksters from getting out. But what you can do in this little end room here is you can actually stick a liquid pump. So you can pump any excess oil out of this bit instead of having it all overflow through the door. You can have it pump that independently. Perhaps we'll set up a hydro sensor up here, so if it detects any oil up here, then it actually starts pumping. And then that can just connect up like this. And then again, we'll just insulate this whole bit here. And then that's actually fine. That's actually the end of the column as such. So we'll just let all that oil drip down. And this is roughly what it'll look like. As you can see, the Slickster is heading over here at the moment. There's no door open, but if we open this door, then the Slickster will be able to path up here. They're very brave little fellow. And they'll immediately go there with no delay into the furthest ranch. And then they'll get some nice carbon dioxide to breathe. So that's how wide it's going to get. You'll be able to mirror this build exactly on either side. On either side of this access column. So you can have even more Slicksters on this side as well. But 8 ranches of 3 Slicksters each on a horizontal level. That's 24 Slicksters per row here. Or 12 per row if we're just doing it on one side like we're doing here. And then we're going to put some more tiles here. And then this build just repeats exactly up here as it does down there. So we'll do that in a minute, but let's actually just have a look at the other overlays first. We'll plug this into, say, a dev power source for now, just to actually get it running. So this could just go over here. In fact, actually, you know what? What we'll do is I'll just seal it at the bottom here. And then we're going to bring this all the way up to the top, in this case. I'll just show you what it looks like on the one side, because the build mirrors identically. And the dev generator can go here. Obviously, in reality, you're probably going to be doing this with petroleum generators. But the wire is very straightforward. You can just send it in here, you can send it down here, send it over here, and then you can send it just along here. All of these loaders and the auto sweepers are in a row, and then you can just send it down to liquid pump like that. So that's really good. Now, there's just a couple more buildings we're going to build as well. I'm going to put a auto sweeper in here so that it can reach this chute. And we're going to set it so that it can reach a loader over here. And we're going to make sure that this loader can't be accessed by this sweeper, because we're going to use this to grab all the egg variants that we don't want. I.e., if we get any accidental long-hair Slickster eggs. I think you will generally have at least a little chance of getting the wrong variant. So this is necessary. The other thing we'll do is we'll actually put some liquid tapidizers down. And the one thing about this build that I don't really like is that this shaft is sort of 1 tile high. This means your duplicants can't get in it for maintenance. But what we'll do is we'll build the tapidizers in the other ranches. We don't necessarily need one for every ranch unless you're doing just the one ranch. In which case you can still fit it in. But what we'll do is we'll take our tapidizers, and these have an overheat temperature of 125 degrees C. So you can just make this out of copper and it'll be fine. We're going to put it in so that you can reach the plug outlet here just fine. And then we're also going to set up a thermosensor in here. And this is going to be very straightforward automation. we're just going to connect these two, and we're going to say, hey, make sure this is above, let's say 70 degrees. We're going to try and keep the room at 70 degrees C as a minimum. And then you can stick a couple of them in each ranch. They're not going to be running all the time. But we'll just make sure that we can actually heat them up sort of locally. 2 will probably do. I'll just put 2 in this little bit. And the oil is pretty conductive, and it's a liquid. So you're going to get a lot of temperature conductivity in general. So I'm not too worried. But we're just going to plug it in like that. If you really think you're going to be running multiple tempernizers at once and you're worried about overloading the wire, you can just send it to different wires and transformers, but we're not going to for the sake of this video. But that's essentially what it's going to look like. Just make sure you copy your setting across over here. And then, let's actually talk about the automation. We're going to do the automation first, because it's pretty straightforward and we've already done some of it. But essentially what we're going to do, so each critter sensor, we're going to set these to below 3 critters. That makes sense. The ranch gets full if it has more than 3 critters in it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to plug that into the door to open up the door and let the Slicksters through from the chute. That's very simple. The other thing we will do is we will set up a... Oh, what gate is this? We'll set up a buffer gate, and we're going to plug it in here. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to do that for all of these... We're just going to do that for all of these critter sensors in sequence. And then we're going to send that signal all the way along here, and we're going to use some bridges to connect it between all the different sensors. And what this is going to do, this is just going to let us tell when all of the ranches in the row are full. That's exactly what we're trying to do with this. And again, we can do this all the way over here as well. Just hook up all these wires, hook up all these sensors the same way. We're just putting the buffer gate in mostly just to split the signal. So you can set these to the minimum possible value, and that's absolutely fine. We're just using it to keep the signal discrete from the actual door signal. So then that's going to go in here. That's going to go in here. And that's going to go over there. And then we're just going to take this out. We're going to put a NOT gate on it, because we love NOT gates. And then we're just going to send this signal straight to the door and open that. And then this critter sensor here, we're just going to open this whenever there's more than 1 critter in this room. And we're going to set it to open this door specifically. So there we go. We've got all of the automation set up. We just need to actually copy and paste this setting across like I said I was going to. There we go. So now these doors are open. And because the Slicksters are going to be laying eggs at different times, you're generally not going to have a load of Slicksters spawn in here at the same time, so you don't really need to worry about lots of Slicksters getting into the same room at once. So what we'll do is we'll just spawn some Slicksters in rapid succession, and then we'll lead them over. So there you go. Now the door shuts, and the Slickster heads to the next one. This feels like a Mario Maker moment or something with me just adding all of these critters in here. I don't know why. So they're going to keep floating over. When the door closes, they reevaluate their motion, and then they'll keep going. And I'm deliberately not actually going to look at the other side of the column. We're just going to keep spawning Slicksters until this door opens. You can hear them all breathing on the other side as well. You can see it takes them a little while to get over here. But now this door is opened, and now you'll see all the Slicksters are reversing course and are actually going in here. So now because there's a Slickster in here, the door opens, there's carbon dioxide in here, they will land here, they need to breathe on this tile to actually move out of the door. So you've got to have carbon dioxide in here. This is why I like to put the gas vent in here for just distributing carbon dioxide to this whole setup. So then they're going to start breathing, and then they're going to start wandering around. But generally, with how often they spawn, you should only end up with 1 in here at a time. Now, what you could do to solve this is you could actually have a door here, and then open this. So if we actually get, say, a duplicant in here just quickly. Let's put the dupe in here, have them open the door. So then this room is going to be much smaller. So now the Slicksters are going to wander around, and you're probably not going to have more You're probably going to have periods where there's not a Slickster in this room. Except when it's nighttime and all the babies are asleep. So let's skip to daytime. So now it's daytime, the Slicksters are going to start moving around again. And eventually, this room will clear. And then the door will lock, and it will start letting them through. So yeah, you can do this in a slightly more complicated way, like we've done in previous videos, to ensure that you have a separate room. But usually, especially because we're only going to have a maximum of 12 breeders in here at once, this room usually isn't going to overfill with critters. And even with a fairly large amount of critters, if you put this door here and have it open, you can get this critter sensor to trigger pretty reliably, even with a large amount of critters. So this is good enough for our purposes. So, finally, let's do the Mechatronics. I'm going to move the gas vent up here, and then you've got a little 2x2 space here that you can put something in. I'm just going to put a little kiln in here. That's fine, right? We want heat in here. You can put whatever you want in here. But basically, we're going to set up the conveyor rails to dump the wrong Slickster eggs out of the map. So this one here, we're going to set this not to edibles. We're going to set this to long hair Slicksters and molten Slicksters, because in this case we're using an oil shaft to get things started, and we're going to be keeping it at that temperature. So we want to send the molten Slicksters to a different ranch that we're going to have at a higher temperature. And that rail can just come through here, that can bypass this chute, and that can come out here. In fact, you know what, actually, you can just send it down here like this. Yeah. Just do that. We could just send the wrong eggs out of here. I'll also actually set this to standard materials because we don't need to keep those in here either. And what we'll then do is we'll take this conveyor loader. This is going to be set to everything. And then this one is just going to dump all of the extra meat and potentially any extra eggs we get out of these guys. That's just going to go up here. So what we'll do is we'll actually put a bridge on this. We'll then cut that rail. You know what, actually, I'm changing my mind on this a little bit. I just want to make sure that it's visually communicated a bit better than I have on my diagram here. We're going to put a bridge in here, and then this material is going to get dumped up here, right? There you go. So you can see that now. So everything is going to get dumped in this bottom shaft, and then it's going to get sorted appropriately. We're also going to get some meat and regular materials up here, so that's also going to get put on this rail here. That's just going to get dumped out. And then this one is going to be set to... This one is going to be set to eggs. And we're going to dump the eggs in this shaft. So this conveyor will just come around here this way. And then that way, we should be definitely getting all of the wrong eggs and the meat and any other products we end up with in these rooms, and it will leave the system. And that's essentially what we're going to do for all of this. So we're just going to hook these conveyor rails up here. We're going to set these to the same settings in each of these rooms. And then similarly, this one here is just going to be set to go over here. And what I'll actually do in this case is I'll just hook them up like this, just so we can build all of the rail really easily. And that's essentially what the Mechatronics is going to look like for our design. So that's going to sort everything out in there. And that's essentially it. We're also going to take our oil and we'll just, I don't know, we'll just dump it out here. Just a regular pipe will do. Nothing super fancy is needed for this. Again, we'll just take this one and we'll bring it out here. That's fine. Not that we're even planning on dumping any oil at the moment anyways. So, now that we've set up our Slickster Ranches horizontally, we're also going to actually extend the column of ranches up here. Up to this tile here, which is actually 32 tiles higher than this tile here. And I'll explain why we're going to do that in a minute. But essentially, we can just stack everything up here. So we can stack these tiles, and I'm going to do that just as the basis for like what it's actually going to look like. Get this sort of interesting little formation going on. These are just going to be the bends in the shafts. And then that's going to go up here. So you can fit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these ranch designs in this row. So let's build that and see what that looks like. And then we'll come right back. So, we're back. What we've done is we've basically just added more vertical columns of our ranches, and you can see we've got quite a lot of them now. But the design just completely stacks on top of each other vertically. We've effectively got 6 different rows of 4 ranches up here. They're all completely independent. Each row is handling 12 Slicksters because of the critter condos. So that's 72 Slicksters total. If we just have a look at the overlays, you can see everything's connected up to the same wire. Obviously it's overloading because we have a lot of tepidizers that are activating at the same time. These are all set to below 70 degrees C to activate, so they're heating up the oil nice and well. But because they're only having to activate very occasionally, because the oil is so conductive, they don't tend to overload the wire a lot. So you can kind of get away with this. Just make sure whatever this is plugged into has a pretty good power draw on it, just in case they all activate at once and drain the batteries. But if we go and have a look at the automation overlay, it's literally the exact same and completely disconnected for all of these ranches. Again, I just want to emphasize, each of these rows is completely independent of the other. The only shared aspect of this design is this central critter dropper bit where it's entirely full of mechanical doors. That's literally the only bit that's shared between them. And that's just so that all of the Slicksters from all the different columns and rows of the ranch drop down into this one tile when they're all ready. And we'll get our duplicate to come over here and open up all of these friggin' doors as well, because it's going to annoy me otherwise. We currently have one bionic duplicant and Wirdo trying their best to sort everything out. But they're a little bit hot, they're not super well trained either. It's just how it goes. If we have a look at the Mechatronics, I've changed it very slightly. So all that we've done is we've taken these conveyors where it's the wrong eggs and the non-egg stuff. That's all going to be coming out through here. Because remember, the wrong eggs from these ranches are going over here and then getting into this loader. So all of the wrong eggs and the actual meat and stuff are all going to get dumped out here. And again, these bits of conveyor rail for each ranch are all actually mutually independent from each other. There should be enough eggs generated by each row to fill up the stockpile here. So each ranch will have its own chute for dropping off baby Slicksters, for dropping off the eggs and making sure the baby Slicksters can get to their respective ranches. So all of these conveyor rails just combine over here, and these could get dumped anywhere. They don't have to get dumped over here. They just get dumped somewhere else in your base, possibly in your Molten Slickster Ranch, possibly in your Longhair Slickster Ranch if you're really trying to flex on people. So, let's address the elephant in the room. Why do we have these long horizontal ranches instead of tall vertical stripe ranches? You may have seen these before, but we can actually reuse the same space that we're using in this block to have many tall ranches along the bottom instead. You can put the grooming stations here, auto sweepers here, and then just have a 3-wide ranch, and you can have it be up to 32 tiles tall to make the 96 tile ranch, and then you can put 8 Slicksters in per column. Overall, the space usage of both builds is about the same. That's only really because we've got the critter condo in here, but you get 72 Slicksters in a square of this size, regardless of whether you're using the long horizontal ranches or the tall vertical striped ranches. You can also make these ranches shorter if you don't need all of that space. You can just do it like this, and then each ranch here now has 2 Slicksters in it. The reason why I'm recommending these long horizontal ranches instead, well actually, I'm recommending both options, but early on, if you're lacking building materials, this build certainly requires less building materials, so it's definitely worth going for that, and then just having the same dropper design, and then just having the same pump along the bottom. And later on, I prefer using this build because you actually have more space to store liquids in here, because you can fill up these shafts with oil all the way, and then you have all these liquid pumps. So if you need a load of oil or petroleum at once to pump into something to get something started, you have access to a large reservoir of liquid to work with. Whereas with this approach, with the vertical shafts, with the vertical ranches, you only have one shaft, and that's just storing a lot less liquid. and you're still storing a similar amount of overall carbon dioxide. We put airflow tiles here in between these vertical stripes, but you can actually do the same with these tiles. You can make all of these tiles airflow tiles if you want. That's not actually going to negatively impact the build. The oil is still going to flow in the right way, and you can store more carbon dioxide in the room and allow your slicksters to breathe it a little bit easier. So overall, the amount of storage space for gases and liquids is relatively similar between these two builds. Obviously, you don't want any of these insulated tiles to be airflows. So let's just finish these ones off here, and then we'll let it go again. But yeah, the build functions exactly the same with these being airflow tiles instead of regular tiles, but obviously the contrast isn't as good for the image, so I didn't want to do that for the whole video. But yeah, both approaches are good, is what I'm trying to say. Either approach will let you ranch the slicksters with automation without needing critter drop-offs, and the vertical stripe design uses less material, but can ultimately store less liquids within it, so you don't have as big a liquid reservoir in case you're using it for emergencies or wanting to fill something else up. You can't actually put liquid reservoirs in these rooms, because then you'd have to put tiles in here, and it would be very annoying, and then it wouldn't be as space efficient as this approach. But either approach is good. I don't mind which one you use, honestly. But I just wanted to show the horizontal ranch design because I haven't seen someone do this before with the critter condos. I thought it was interesting. Also, something to note, you will often actually end up with one slickster in these columns, because although they could technically move into this door when there's one of them, they don't actually tend to do it. Like, if we put another slickster in here, then you'll see the slicksters will move in slightly different ways, depending on when they breathe as well. I think when they breathe, they end up wanting to go in that door. So if they don't necessarily need to breathe for a while, they might not do it. So don't worry about it if you see the slickster doing this. That will resolve itself over time. And then the final thing to do with this, I've saved it till last because it's not really that critical. We're just going to put a little liquid lock up here. Just take some crude oil, put some bottle emptiers in here. Just dump some of the excess crude oil that you have and put it in here, and then it will form a little vacuum. And if we don't actually seal this bit off, it will stay as an unenclosed room for your guys. Although in this case, I need to clear out this space as well a little bit, just so it connects up to the rest of the area, but that's actually fine. We'll do the same over here. And now, because there's a vacuum tile in here, the build is completely heat-proof. So obviously, at the moment, it's very hot, but now we're not going to leak any of this heat to the outside of the map, because it's all surrounded in insulated tiles, and the only entrance has a vacuum tile on it. So we're not going to have any issues with that either. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts on slicksters in oxygen not included. I think they're a really useful critter, being able to turn a normal waste product into a useful industrial material. What I would say, if you're trying to get molten slicksters out of this build, set it up for regular slicksters first with some crude oil. Put a tepidizer in here and just have, like, say, one ranch breeding away. Get the eggs you want and then dump them into a separate ranch where you're going to have your molten slicksters. And then you can multiply them up. You can fill the whole block with petroleum. And then you can have a large reservoir to tap into for, say, your petroleum rockets or a sour gas boiler or whatever you want. And you've got the petroleum here waiting for you to be pumped with this overall setup here. So, yeah, really like slicksters. Let me know in the comments what you like to do with slicksters. Do you prefer to use the vertical stripe approach? It's also a very good approach, and it's a lot less building material, so definitely worth considering as well. We've done a lot of stuff with slicksters, but we've mostly done it off-stream. We haven't done that much of it on Twitch, but we're going to end up doing a lot of it in Sour Gas or Bust, because we're going to be generating a lot of carbon dioxide eventually with our industry, and we're going to be recycling that into sour gas by making petroleum with molten slicksters and then boiling that petroleum even further, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, we'll let these guys produce their oil, and I'll let Whiskers see us out. Bye for now.
Whiskers sends thanks to the following Twitch subscribers and YouTube members: 999999999, Ayla Ivo, FRD. Lagbot 30,000, Neo Deus Machina, Quantum Zari, Stinger's Playground, Sweet Danger Kitty, Charlie Kelly 4086, Christian Nielsen 9363, Mark Miller 5161, and Xantiphon.